Hey team, and welcome back to the second part of my video where I test every single one of the clone Bambu Lab parts currently on the market. But more importantly, in this second part of the video, I'm going to come to my bigger conclusions and also explain what this means for the Bambu Lab ecosystem and if I think this changes everything about their closed source ecosystem. By the way, if you missed the first part of this video, we broke it up into two parts to allow my video editor to, sleep and take a shower. So you can click that here. Otherwise, let's just go ahead and dive right back into the second part of the video. Here we go. Let's dive into the other big modification category that's already hitting the market for these printers, and that is the third-party build plates. Now, if you recall, when I reviewed the Bambu Lab X1 Carbon, my biggest gripe had to do with the build surface. I didn't like that there was no way to get a nicely textured print, and I especially hated that I needed to use glue stick for both sides of the included plate. Fortunately, after publishing the first video, I got in touch with Wham, who generously offered to send me their awesome PEX flexible build surface, and that was a game changer on the ease of use aspect. With their build plate, I no longer had to deal with glue stick unless it was to protect the build surface from PETG sticking too well, and my prints just stuck beautifully every single time. Side note, I did forget one time to not put on glue stick when I printed with PETG, and they're not kidding. I ruined my perfect, beautiful PEX build surface, so that's a bummer. No issues with the LiDAR or bed leveling or anything like that, and wow, look at that mirror finish on the bottom of my prints. Super impressive, and it definitely comes in handy if you are printing functional parts that need very, very exact tolerances on the bottom face. So before I get into some of the other options out there, would I recommend it? To be clear, Wham didn't sponsor this video, but this was the only product on the list that I was given free of charge and didn't buy with my own money. And Wham has sponsored a past episode of the show, so internet rules would dictate that I cannot be trusted as anything more than a corporate shill. But with that in mind, I can confidently say that I would recommend this upgrade to anyone with the X1 Carbon who wants an easier print experience with no glue stick or adhesion issues whatsoever, as long as they don't mind that glass finish on the bottom, which isn't for everyone. This thing is just really easy to use, it's durable and well made, and I think that it's worth the extra price as long as you don't destroy it with PETG in the first one. I even have one on the way for my own Voron 2.4 because while I love the textured finish, as you're about to see, I got really tired of having such an insane, massive 3D printer that can handle engineering grade materials, but then not being able to get exact dimensions when I actually need the parts to be exact, because my only option was a textured build surface. With all that said, the Wham plate still didn't solve my other issue with the original cool plate, which is that I really do prefer a textured surface on my more aesthetic prints. Fortunately, the industrious folks in the People's Republic of China wasted no time in coming out with their own solutions for the build plate conundrum. The first being this double-sided PEI, now available for the low price of $25, which is half the price of Wham single-sided option, though shockingly, not the cheapest one I tested. But is it any good? Honestly, yeah, it's pretty darn good. At first I had some difficulties getting prints to stick, but after a thorough treatment with 99% isopropyl alcohol, I was up and running in no time. Now, the seller does claim that this is a PEI build surface, but honestly, I'm calling BS because I've been around powder-coated products for literally 2 decades, and this thing is powder-coated. And for that reason, I'm not worried about things like PETG ripping up chunks. Conversely, I've tested this thing out with ABS, PLA, and PETG and had absolutely no issues with bed adhesion whatsoever. I will say though that in Wham defense, it is much cheaper to produce a powder-coated product from a manufacturing perspective. And also, I know from my experience with similar knockoffs for my Prusa, for example, that this build plate will probably not have the longevity of a PEI or PEX build surface, simply because powder coating is not really as rugged as a literal sheet of protective plastic, nor does it have the ability to recover and bounce back after a good steel wool scrubbing and an acetone wipe like a PEI build surface does. Also, unlike the PEX surface from Wham, I won't be able to repair this one simply by applying a new surface to it, so over time, the Wham could save you a lot of money. With all that said, I love the finish that this gives me, and it's exactly what was missing for me from the Bambu Lab experience. But what about the LiDAR? I hear all of you shouting at your screens. Okay, hang on. Before we go any further, I do need to take a moment to thank this video's sponsor, which is PCBWay. PCBWay allows makers like you and I to create professionally produced parts, whether that means PCBs or injection molded pieces or sheet metal fabrication or even 3D printing metal. And that I thought was a perfect fit for this video because we're talking about the huge potential that we all have despite Bambu Labs' closed ecosystem to design awesome upgraded parts. And I think PCBWay is going to be a big part of that. Whether someone wants to come out with upgrades, they can make one for themselves or make 1,000 and have someone like PCBWay print the PCBs or make the sheet metal fabrication or even 3D print the parts in metal or resin or any other technology. Check out PCBWay with the link below because it supports the channel, but also because they make it so much easier to level up your projects and upgrades to the next level. So thanks PCBWay for supporting this channel. All right, let's get back into the next upgrade. After my last video, approximately 7 million of you commented that LiDAR compatibility was the reason for not shipping a textured plate with the X1C. Well, I have news for you guys. Either the LiDAR works way better than it thinks it does, or as some have suggested, it's not really doing anything at all, or the X1C is somehow magically ensuring that each print is absolutely perfect with just nozzle probing. Because since using this plate, I've had literally no issues with first layers. Yes, there are a bunch of errors that pop up on the screen, for example, telling me that my filament does not reflect on the laser enough, or that the micro LiDAR camera is dirty and needs cleaning. But the results speak for themselves. By setting my slicer to expect the textured plate, I was able to produce perfect print after perfect print, including long, flat objects that should have had bed adhesion issues. I hate to say it, but because I love that textured finish so much, this falsely advertised, half-priced Chinese knockoff build plate quickly and honestly became my daily driver for the Bambu. Yeah, if I need exact tolerances, such as for anything engineering-y, I'm using the Wham. But for aesthetic prints, I'm really enjoying this AliExpress one. And as you can guess, unless I'm printing nylon or some other exotic filament, old gooey gluey over here is pretty much just collecting dust on the shelf. So, bottom line, would I recommend this powder-coated plate? Hell yes. I absolutely love it, and I think I'm going to pick up a couple more just so I have them. Because, you see, there is another. Because I promised you guys that I would test all the knockoff parts out there, so I also went ahead and ordered this double-sided flexible PEI build plate surface thing, which is honestly exactly like all the other Chinese PEI gold build plate surface things that I've seen on all my other printers, whether it's the one that I added to my CR10 or the one that came with my Voron 2.4. It's just cut in the unique shape to fit the Bambu Lab printers. This one was suspiciously cheap at $19 shipped, and so I was pretty sure that I would just be throwing my money away for science. As far as a print surface goes, I've always loved these gold PEI sheets, except for one small thing. As I mentioned before when talking about my Voron 2.4, they're extremely textured. Now that's great if you're, say, printing a trash can lid for your home and you want it to look like it wasn't 3D printed, and most of the time I prefer this look. But again, as I said before, if you're printing precise parts that need to fit together exactly or have precise dimensions, then this type of build surface is really much less ideal. From my experience, these plates have excellent bed adhesion. They're silly durable, and I've literally never had one chip, flake, or even scratch. And they're just great value for the money. But how do they work with the Bambu Lab X1 Carbon and its fancy pants LiDAR? Or any other Bambu Lab product for that matter? Let's find out. Based on the sheer number of comments about textured plates and LiDAR, I honestly had very low expectations when I began printing with this thing, but honestly, I was blown away. The bed adhesion is insane. It's actually so good that I couldn't peel off the priming strips with my fingernail. I even decided to test out the bed adhesion by printing something that honestly should be an issue without brims, and it still stuck on perfectly. But what about LiDAR, bed leveling, and all that? Well, I'll let the results speak for themselves. Here, again, check out these prints. Flawless. Yes, there is still an error saying that the camera is dirty, though I did try to clean it, but hey, maybe that error isn't even related to the build plate. There's certainly no shortage of rogue errors on these relatively new printers. So I then decided to print a simple first layer test and do some surface texture samples, and here's how they turned out. Note that these all use the same basic PLA, same profile, and almost identical G-code, except that I sliced the two non-textured ones with the appropriate slicer setting for that build plate. Now, let's look at the results. On the far left, we have the gold PEI plate. On the second left, we have the black powder-coated plate. Next, we have the Wham Bam with the glassy finish. And finally, we have the Bambu cool plate, which, due to the fact that you do need to use glue stick, has the worst surface finish of them all. In fact, it even had some adhesion issues on the initial flow calibration. Have I mentioned that I hate this thing? Now, I'll let you decide for yourselves and comment below which one you like the most, but for me, the clear winner is the gold PEI sheet. Yes, the $19 cheapy one for textured parts, and obviously the Wham Bam plate for more precise parts. So, my conclusion? Would I recommend this gold PEI plate? 100%. For $19 shipped, it's a total no-brainer, and I definitely recommend buying it over the original Bambu plate, which costs $35. Not that $35 is expensive, but honestly, I can't see how the original would be any better than this one, frankly. Maybe someone who actually has it can let me know in the comments if it also has that camera dirty error, but other than that, I mean, what more can you ask for? The bigger picture. So we've tested some parts, we've gained some functionality, but I feel like this video would not be complete, despite being like an hour long, without asking the two bigger questions on everyone's mind. First, what does this mean for the closed ecosystem of Bambu Lab? Admittedly, these first few parts are relatively low tech, though a machined aluminum heatsink is not some easy die-cut product. And this is, of course, just the beginning. It's only a matter of time until there are replacements available for, say, the fans. Now, I'm quite sure as well that LDO already has motors suitable and available off the shelf that work with the Bambu products. And, of course, it's worth mentioning that this is 3D printing we're talking about. We're already seeing a huge influx of open source designs, not only for add-ons like the poop buckets and the PTFE tube guides, but I've even started to see new designs that completely replace and improve entire parts of the printer, such as this redesign of the AMS. Now, these parts are already flooding sites like Printables, and again, we're just getting started. And honestly, since I originally recorded, there's been even more parts that came out to market, such as polycarbonate panels for the P1P, PEO build surfaces, and of course, all different kinds of air purifiers, plus the silicone socks, which were not available when I tore mine. I honestly think that even if I tried to produce a video with every single one of these aftermarket modifications, every time I order the new batch, there's going to be more by the time I get them. So I did my absolute best here. And plus, you have to imagine that with services like PCBWay, it's going to get even easier for people to produce more and more complex parts for these printers. So I might have to do another follow-up video here. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see that. It's going to become really easy to recreate even the proprietary parts of this ecosystem, such as electronics and PCBs. And I think it's really only a matter of time until someone hacks this thing to run on open source firmware. So at least from my perspective, when it comes to the whole closed source thing, I gotta say, so what? While closed source hardware has admittedly stopped people from modifying complex products like the iPhone, let's be honest, this isn't an iPhone. 3D printers are inherently more modifiable because they need to have parts that are easy to replace, and they have a lot of consumable parts. And I don't think Bambu has or will go to the efforts and lengths to stop those types of modifications and upgrades. In fact, from everything I've seen online in their communities, they're actually encouraging them, whether it's via the release of products like the P1P or via their tech support, openly encouraging people to download, print, and install various fixes like the AMS spacer or PTFE tube lining. The folks at Bambu Lab clearly aren't stupid, and they understand their target market very well. So while we can all cry closed source, the fact of the matter is they've made these products surprisingly modifiable and upgradable compared to, say, an iPhone, while protecting their own IP. But there's also a second big question, and it's one that's been weighing on, and one that I really want to hear your opinions on in the comments below. And that's this. Is it actually worth modifying your Bambu Lab P1P or X1 Carbon? After all, as I said in part 2 of my X1 Carbon review, the real selling point of the Bambu Lab lineup is how meticulously they've designed the hardware and software to work together in perfect harmony. And anytime that you change that, whether it's by adding a slightly taller nozzle, increasing the flow rate, or using a print surface that isn't designed for the product itself, well, you mess with that harmony. Now, it may only cause small changes like a little bit of stringing, and those changes may be easy enough to fix by tweaking the profiles. But that's not the point. The point is that by doing this, you're negating what is probably, again, the biggest selling point of these machines. They just work perfectly. Sure, you may enjoy tweaking your machines for peak performance, but if that's the case, I still think that you'd be better off building your own machine like the Voron 2.4 that I built. So what I've been asking myself, and what I'd love to hear again in the comments from all of you, is this. Are the small savings of money and tiny improvements in things like flow rate, build surface quality, or convenience actually worth stepping out of the curated walled garden experience and into a world where you're on your own to tweak your own profiles, solve your own problems, and clear your own error messages every time you print? I'd love to know what all of you think in the comments below. And by the way, thank you so much to both PCBWay for making this episode possible, and to my Patreon supporters who make it possible for me to come back every single week doing what I love, which is 3D printing and talking about 3D printing. By the way, go ahead and check out this other video where I talk about some of the benefits of the walled garden ecosystem and what the experience is really like, or just check out this one, which for some reason the YouTube algorithm and its all-knowing wisdom thinks that you'll like. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see all of you on the next layer.